website immediately after this meeting where you can see what Berkeley has documented in terms of what our team's been doing. But just a couple things I want to point out. They've engaged in over 1,600 hours of street outreach. If that team wasn't in place, that number would be 0. They responded to over 26 incidents in 12 months that we believe would have resulted in more gunfire, Mayor. If that team was not in place, that number would have been 0. We've helped many of our young men engage in pro-social events, connected them with human services networks. We've taken them on excursions out of Lansing. We've taken them to New York. We've taken them to Chicago. We've taken them to Detroit. We've taken them down south to Atlanta, to Montgomery, particularly to see a museum where they could learn where they actually came from, to understand their roots. And they have begun to have conversations about why are we even engaging in these behaviors? Because no one was ever there to talk to them about who they were and where they actually came from. And so I really appreciate that team that's spending the time to deal with many of these issues that are plaguing our young men and women in the community today. The last point I'll make before I turn it back over to Kate is we are actually expanding our footprint in the city as well as our partnership. And so the handout that you were given today when you walked in is a visual of that expansion. We do have a street outreach team, which I just introduced. We have a field coordinator, neighborhood change agents, and peacekeepers. We have community partners who have signed up to help us with this work. The Village Lansing is here. The Lansing School District is here. We're also working with the Eastside Community Action Center and Child and Family Charities. They're going to be 2 new partners that help us provide behavioral health services to these young men and also establish a presence in the southeast side of Lansing. Our funders continue to be the City of Lansing, Ingham County, and the Department of Justice. And if I could just, for a moment, I almost want to get up like a professor and go to the board, but I want to keep refraining myself from doing that. If you look at this map, in the southwest side of Lansing, that's exactly where we, oh, thank you so much, Kate. We actually had our first year initiative there. Can everybody hear me, or do I need to keep? Okay. Let me get up here. Michelle Napier-Dunnings is in the room, and so that spirit is coming out of me. So we did our work here in the first year of Lansing, and we targeted 15 fellows to be a part of our Peacemaker Fellowship. And based on the success here, we have talked to our funders about expanding this work throughout the city of Lansing. And so this coming year, you will see us establish a presence in the southeast side of Lansing based on feedback we've gotten from the community and our fellows. As you know, it takes more than one person to be in the feud. And so while we've engaged fellows on the southwest side, a lot of the feuds they have are with individuals who reside on the southeast side of Lansing. And so we want to make sure that we can engage that community to deal with both sides of feuds that might take place. We're also having conversations with the superintendent about making sure we have a presence in our high schools in Lansing. And so we're in conversations now. Hopefully we have solidified position descriptions and a commitment by January 2024 to place peacekeepers in the neighborhoods surrounding all of our high schools. And so those peacekeepers will be in the buildings, surrounding spaces, as well as at our athletic events, football games, basketball games, to make sure that we're aware of things that are taking place within those spaces. We've been in conversation with the police chief and the deputy police chief of East Lansing. They're here today to talk about concerns we have in the city of East Lansing. And so we've written grants and received federal funding to expand advanced peace into the city of East Lansing. And very shortly we'll be in conversations with the newly elected city council and mayor and city manager to talk about how we might expand this partnership over to the city of East Lansing. And then we have a vision for 2024 to 2025 where we'll continue to raise funds to make sure that we expand advanced peace into the northwest and northeast side of Lansing. And so our hopes and dreams is that that team there will probably quadruple in size by this time next year, and that our fellowship will quadruple in size by this time next year based on the great work that we're doing in this public-private partnership. thank you all. I'll turn it back over to Kate.
Okay, great, thank you. Next up, we're going to hear a little bit from DeLisa Fontaine about our neighborhoods and the impact.
Oh, I have a naturally loud voice anyway, so. But I just want to make you know how unfair it is to go after the mayor and after a pastor. So I hope you don't have your hopes up too high for me. I'll talk a little bit about the importance of this in neighborhoods, and after talking to neighborhood leaders and their thoughts on what the advanced peace model has done for their neighborhoods. First of all, of course, as Mayor has stated, the City of Lansing is very happy to be a partner in this. Jumping ahead of things is key, and we're very happy to be a partner in this. And as a director for the Department of Neighborhoods, Arts and Citizen Engagement, I hear firsthand from our neighborhood leaders how gun violence impacts our cities at the neighborhood level. So our neighborhood leaders are very excited to have this in our city, are very supportive of this as well. So important to focus right in Southwest Lansing. I think the one thing you can say is that every part of Lansing is very special and unique, and Southwest Lansing neighborhood is no exception. But there was a period of time when the gun violence rose so swiftly in Southwest Lansing, we knew we had to do something, and it needed to be done immediately, and it needed to be innovative, and it needed to stick in that neighborhood. And the advanced peace model fits great within that neighborhood by using agents with direct ties to that neighborhood and not bringing in complete strangers. So there's already a trust factor built in, and so with that trust factor built in, they were able to be in that neighborhood and talk with the youth there versus a stranger coming in and attempting this model. You know, of course, gun violence it's not a one-stop shop. That's the one thing we have to remember about all of this. Gun violence prevention is not a one-stop shop. You have what I like to call a pie, right? You have prevention, interruption and intervention, and you have enforcement, and that's your key ingredients to this solution pie, right? PIE. If without these key ingredients, we'll never reach our solution. So it's very important that we have as many organizations at each perspective table to reach as many youth as possible. Many years ago, while serving as project director for Neon with One Love Global, a young man told us that there are 3 things that our youth need from us: love, consistency, and mentorship. And to tie that all into our pie, and you'll see a very positive result for our neighborhoods, our wards, and of course our city as a whole. So how do I feel about the progress, and am I proud to be involved? Absolutely, I'm very proud to be involved in this. As a resident of Southwest Lansing, I am very thankful to see the improvements in Southwest Lansing that are happening right now. As a mother of 3 boys, one who has lost a childhood friend to gun violence in Southwest Lansing, I am incredibly honored and proud to be a part of this work. I look forward to expanding this model into the southeast side of Lansing and then across the entire city. And I look forward to other cities surrounding us being involved and being as, quick plug, financially involved as the city of Lansing has been, because this is incredibly important. We can pour into the city of Lansing, but as we know, our youth are not staying in the neighborhoods as they were in the 80s. Our youth travels, our youth are mobile. So it's very important for the city surrounding Lansing to also invest in this model and invest in the whole pie effort, right? Prevention, interruption, and enforcement in it. And I just want to say, most of all, I'm hopeful for the mothers and fathers in the city, and I'm thankful for each day that we're not preparing to lay another loved one to rest due to senseless, reactive, and retaliatory gun violence.
So you talk about a tough act to follow. So last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Adenike. See, now I screwed it up. Dr. Adenike Shoyinka with Adenike.
So my voice is not as loud as DeLisa's, so I'm going to have to use this. Good morning, everybody. I am really happy to be here. Happy to be here because it's amazing to hear everything that has been happening, even though we have been a part of the conversation, but to hear the numbers and to hear the progress is just heartwarming. But it is kind of sad also to be having this conversation in the very first place. And you know, as you think about what that means for us here, we're fortunate here in Ingham County, in Lansing, to have the support that we have from the mayor. Our county commissioners have been very supportive. They want to hear how things are going, what exactly it looks like, and all of our leadership. And then we have amazing partners to work with. In addition, I just want to, first of all, acknowledge, you know, everybody on that table there and just say, you guys have done an amazing job. I remember at the beginning of this, the goal was to reduce the violence by 40% over 3 years? Okay. And so what was the number that we have now in 1 year?
65%.
65%. That requires another round of work, but there's so much more to do, and my job here was to kind of talk a little bit about why it's so important and the framework for which we do that at the health department and why it's important to talk about it as at the county. So we all know, and I don't need to tell you all the numbers, but I will tell you that you know, gun violence has increased over time. If you think about, say, the year 2020, before 2020, accidents were the leading cause of death in children. And then for many years, actually, it wasn't like 5 years ago, it was many years. And then all of a sudden it's flipped, and gun violence became that leading cause. So it's exciting to see that we're all, you know, working on on addressing it and not just saying, oh my God, the numbers are going up. And when I talk about gun violence here, we are talking about, you know, gang-related and retaliatory violence, but then there's so much more that goes in there, right? We are seeing increased numbers in, you know, gun-related suicides too. And so all of those things make it really important for the work that we're doing here. This is a great start, and there's so much more that we need to do. Violence, and forgive me, I'm a physician, and so I kind of relate that to what I do on an everyday basis. And when we think about gun violence overall, it is from a public health standpoint, we acknowledge that it kills people, right? It kills people, it makes people sick, makes them disabled for life, names them, takes them to a place where either physically or mentally or socially they're impaired and their lives are changed forever. That is a problem, right? And so when we think about it from a public health standpoint, our job is prevention. And so when we think about prevention, we're like, how do we do this so that it doesn't happen again? Hence why we're here, hence why we have this amazing panel over here on this table. And so when we also, even though we think about prevention, but that prevention is one piece where we think we are trying to prevent it, but at the same time we have to be sure that we're thinking about the fact that we're not going to accept the fact that these things are inevitable, right? We need to think about how can we drive those numbers even more to, you know, to a place where we're at 0. So 65 is great, and if we can do this in 1 year, then absolutely, I'm so convinced that we're going to have greater numbers in the future. And so when I talk about public health, gun violence as a public health issue, we look at it not just from, you know, keeping guns away or, you know, all of those other things. We want to look at the whole person and how it impacts each individual. When I think about when one person is shot, think about it, that person gets sick, they're shot, they have a big wound, they have to go to the hospital, they're traumatized, they have family, if it's a man in his household who has children, has a job, can't go to work, loses, you know, may or may not lose their job, maybe he has insurance, maybe he doesn't, you know, and so it's just this whirlwind of it. Talk less of the trauma that is related to it. And so those are all the things that we think about in our space, how we want to address this. So when I speak to that, it's really important that we look at the whole picture and as we move forward. And here at the county, at the health department, we are doing that by looking at what, like I said, not just looking at what violence looks like here, but also in the other spaces by looking to hopefully expand that. But in the context of advanced peace, we're excited about that expansion, increasing our numbers, but also increasing our services in terms of what we can can do. So when I talked a lot about the trauma that each individual experiences, and so the trauma in the home, in the community, DeLisa talked about what that means in our communities. So when an individual experiences that, how does it affect them, the communities in which they live, the kids around them. We're talking about how this looks like in schools. And so what we want to think about, and one of the things that we're doing in terms of expansion is bringing in a program specialist into our program. And that program specialist is going to help with navigating our peacekeepers, our fellows rather, in terms of supporting them in that space to make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful. So there's a lot of great work that happens in the context of leadership. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the context of accountability, showing them what life can look like. But then we also want to make sure that they can make it to the hospital, that they have the mental health support that they need to be successful. Because of course we know that health is not just physical health; it's also mental health. So when the other piece of this, the other point I want to make is that all of this, DeLisa put in a plug, all of this costs money. It costs money, significant impact on the individual. When we look at the numbers, we talk about how gun violence, with each gun homicide, it costs up to $2.4 million according to the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform. It's significant in terms of what can happen. And so when we think about that prevention piece, see how much more we can save and put into our communities and help our students, our kids to do a lot better. One of the really important things that we have enjoyed at the health department, and I think COVID has really taught me that, is that our partnerships are critical. We have realized as a county, as a health department, that we cannot do anything alone. During the pandemic, we worked with partners across the county to do what we had to do to make sure that our county was safe. The same thing is happening here with Advanced Peace. Paul talked about some of the grants that we're working on right now with child and family charities. And so when we talk about working with our partners, one, we're bringing in a lot of resources, from different human resources, insight, working with the people in our communities who have the lived experience. So it gives us the opportunity to, meet people where they're at. Even this program in its entirety gives us an opportunity to gain more insight into what we need as a public health organization to develop the policies, the programs, the processes that we need to move forward. And so as I think about all of that, it helps us to also do collect a lot of data. That is important for us, data, and do the research, because when we work to put the data together, put the research together, then we have better information to respond to the work that we need to do. Because if we do it in a vacuum, I just assume that what I'm supposed to do is this, without really gathering the proper information, then we are less productive. A good example is how we talk about what how mental health impacts public health, versus the drugs and alcohol. The numbers are different, and so how we apply our resources is really important in that space. And so, just in closing, I think my last point would be that, I'm really excited, super excited about where we're going. In the next year, we are going to be seeing 60 new fellows, and I think that it's going to make a tremendous impact on the whole person, on our communities, because that's our priority, to protect and promote the health of the communities that we serve. And if we can take this one piece, noting that there's so many aspects to this, this is a very complex and complicated problem, but as we begin to identify the things that we need, we can grow in that space, expand the work, and truly make sure that we all experience a healthy life. So thank you. I appreciate all of you guys there. Thank you.
going to open things up for Q&A, and that can come from our members of the media, of course, as well as anyone else. I'm going to welcome Jeffrey from the Lansing City Council and Ben from the Lansing School District into this portion. I know, Paul, you had one comment that you wanted to make, so as you're thinking of your questions, we can go ahead and get started with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something DeLisa mentioned, and it's really the mothers and fathers who are impacted by this violence in our community. And so just want to appreciate them and encourage them to reach out and connect with us, and also appreciate my wife who's here, who allows me to go out and do this work, because there is no time schedule to do this work. This isn't an 8 to 5 job. This is, we have to respond to it. I know Marlon is married too, and so just want to appreciate Marlon's wife, and Charles is married. And so a plug to the ladies. Thank you all for letting us do this work. Pray for your husbands who are out in the community doing this work, because we want to make sure that they come home every night safe.
All right, what questions do we have to start today? Okay, so you know that I have one, of course, right? So I want to start with, we mentioned that when this work started, it was a small group, 30 to 35, and now we've seen that grow to more than 80. So I am going to play devil's advocate and go back to my journalism roots here and ask, how can we claim that advanced peace is working if the number of people involved is growing?
I can take that question, and I got a note here that we have additional representatives in the room. Just want to acknowledge them: Representative Kara Hope, Councilmember Tamara Carter, Mitchell Nelson from Senator Peter's office, and County Commissioner Bob Pena. Thank you all for being here today and for your support. Let me, and the mayor could probably follow up. I would say that we want the community to hold advanced peace accountable to the fellowship. As the mayor mentioned, we are part of the ecosystem here in the community, and so we're not solely responsible for reducing gun violence in the community. What we are responsible for is identifying individuals who are at the center of that gun violence, and last year we committed to identifying 15 of those, and I share with you that 12 of them are doing great. When we look at the research and evidence to look at issues related to recidivism and what's effective in changing attitudes and behavior, getting 12 out of 15 individuals to change their behavior from something like that is amazing. There's not much research out there that says you can change behavior in 12 months from someone who's been living a certain lifestyle for 15 to 25 years. And so I heard a comment this past week: if you walk in the forest 17 years, it takes you 17 years to get out of it. So many of our young men have been walking in that space for years. And advanced peace is a pro-social opportunity to put people to think differently and behave differently. In terms of this coming year, we're going to expand that to 60, and we'll come back and let you know how the 60 are actually doing. And we believe if we expand this model to engage in 60 to 80 folks in our community based on the evidence and information we're receiving, gun violence should continue to be down. So hold us accountable to those who join our fellowship.
Other questions we have? So my next one, can you help us understand what advanced peace is not? We talked a lot about cyclical and retaliatory gun violence, but Dr. Adenike, you mentioned that that's not all gun violence, right? So can you help us understand what advanced peace is not and what isn't addressed by this type of work?
Sure. Advanced peace is an evidence-based strategy where we spend
Oh, just abandon.
Where we spend time with individuals who are engaged in cyclical and retaliatory gun violence on a daily basis. We contact them up to 3 times a day through social media, through life skills classes, through meals that we have with them, through mentoring sessions, to speak to them about issues that they're encountering every day, individuals that they might be feuding with, goals that they actually have in life. We create goals with them and help them accomplish those goals so that they would have a future. What Advanced Peace is not it's not a program. It's not a program that targets at-risk individuals. It's not something that we just want to engage all youth in. We've been getting calls from judges, from folks in the probate court, the juvenile court, asking, can we enroll certain people into our initiative? I ask, is this individual really not a candidate for Advanced Peace? Because we're trying to identify a threat that's in our community and engage that threat. And if folks wonder why we're doing that, when we do intakes with many of our fellows here in Lansing and throughout the country, the thing we find is that they are not connected to any human services network. They have been able to evade law enforcement, and they remain a threat in the community. And we believe that the NCAs and peacekeepers that we have recruited for this work, they're credible in the community. And if they won't talk to law enforcement or they won't connect with our human services agencies, maybe they'll connect with our guys, and we can get them to begin to change their behaviors.
If I can add, and I'll add
Please
that the point that Paul made at the very end there, this is not law enforcement. Our law enforcement is here. They are supportive. You know, they can help to identify. They can be partners. But this is not law enforcement. And we said that from the very beginning. Again, our chief is fully supportive, and I expect the East Lansing chief would be as well. But these are folks who can get in and are not part of law enforcement. They're peers. They're people who have been there. They're people who have life experiences. But it's not law enforcement. And that is, I think, an important distinction that was made. Also, we missed two commissioners. So Commissioner Schaefer is here, Commissioner Pawar is here. Whenever you call out names, you always miss someone. So apologies to all of the county commissioners that were missed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
It's my fault too.
I do have a question. So you did say that you will be expanding and using the services towards schools. What would that role be like? Restorative justice kind of helps with keeping peace in the school districts. That is a service that Ingham County, with the juvenile millage, they provide. What kind of advanced peace would be needed in schools, one, and what kind of collaboration are you looking for?
Yeah, I'll comment and then turn it over to the superintendent. We've had conversations for the last year about who's carrying weapons. Some of the individuals that are carrying weapons are school age, and some of them are in schools in the city of Lansing and in the city of East Lansing. And so we've begun those discussions. We know that kids carry weapons. They leave them around school buildings. They might not bring them into schools every day, but they have access to those weapons. And feuds can come from the community into a school or start in a school and move outside of a school. And so the discussions we've been having is, would it be possible, are we interested in assigning a peacekeeper to be in those spaces? Not necessarily just in the school, but in the surrounding area of the school, at basketball games after schools, at football events after schools, and other activities that take place where we might get wind that something might break out, right? Well, I got a call yesterday saying that we hear students from schools are going to be downtown fighting, and so we got that information and dealt with that matter. And so we believe if we build relationship, credibility, and a sense of safety in those spaces, that people will come forth and share information with us to keep those spaces safe. So we've been talking to the superintendent and his team about that, and we're making plans to move forward with that potential partnership.
Yeah, I mean, as Paul said, look, as a school district, all we want to do is to keep our children and our community safe. And the more that we partner with organizations that have their ear to the ground, that know things, that have relationships, that's what matters, right? Research is really clear. To move academic success, you need a great teacher in a room, you need tutoring, and you need mentoring. Well, what a great partnership to have that allows us to have students that might be at risk. And again, I do want to make something clear. We are the Lansing School District and we do serve 10,000 students in the Lansing area. However, youth violence is not just endemic to the Lansing School District. There are many other schools in the area and many other students that are not part of our schools that are part of this. And that's why, as Paul was saying, it's not just about being in the school, it's being around the school. Sadly, at a football game, it actually might be kids from different districts coming into those games. It might be other community issues. As a district, I can only impact the 10,000 kids that are under our purview. By partnering with MPHI and Advanced Peace, it allows us to really address youth issues in toto rather than just in one entity. And so we're thrilled when Paul and I first started to talk about it, why not use schools as a center for folks to feel safe and secure? That's really important. And to the question in terms of restorative justice, the school districts also do that, right? Restorative justice tends to be two kids are having an issue, something happens, how do you bring them together so that they don't do that? That's very powerful, and we do that. It could be restorative justice with a teacher and a child, a family and a child. With Advanced Peace, this is sadly the higher level of that. This is gun violence. This is real serious stuff that we want to make sure that we have this very tight partnership. And we're really looking forward to having folks in our schools because, as the mayor really pointed out, this is about that relationship that you're going to get that information and support them, and the students and their families see this as a support rather than yet another burden on them. So I look forward to the partnership, and I know that it'll do great for our kids and our community.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. We want to be respectful about everyone's time. I really, yes.
Just real quick.
Absolutely.
So as also, as a county commissioner, I sit on the law courts. So when we're looking at the specialty courts, are you looking at partnering with our specialty courts to potentially bring in some fellows in that area if they're dealing with gun violence?
Thank you for the question. Referrals for Advanced Peace can come from any source. We get calls from people every week, and so we would be happy to sit down and talk with the court, with the bench, to talk about a partnership. And what I will say is, if someone joins the fellowship, it is confidential. We don't share with anyone who's a part of the fellowship, and so even though we follow up and connect with them, we won't be able to tell you if they join the fellowship or not. We have an evaluation that's being conducted by Berkeley University, who actually tracks that information, and they will report out anonymously the fellowship. They show up here, they observe what we're doing, they gather data daily, we report that data weekly, and so they're sort of a credible third party who has access to that information and can share that with us in the community.
Thank you. All right, so I want to thank our members of the media for helping educate people, reach parents and families and teachers and clergy and others in the community that it's really important for them to know and understand about Advanced Peace Lansing. As we wrap up, any of our panelists will be available for interview afterward, so please feel free to snag one of them. Any additional questions, please feel free to grab anyone in an Advanced Peace shirt to ask your questions, and especially Charles, right? You're the now officially all the questions. Before we do officially wrap up, one person on our panel has not had an opportunity to answer a question or speak today. So Jeffrey, I want to give you a moment just to share a little bit about the council's perspective, because I know that's a really important component.
Well, I speak as myself. Council is, of course, a collective body, but it's a privilege to be here. I'm a Lansing native. And when I hear about the numbers and the change that we've seen, I know that it's a person behind that. And so when we've talked about applauding these gentlemen here, it touches very deep in my heart because they have literally saved lives. And so I'm very humbled to be here. I believe that you plant your treasure where your heart is. I know that I'm committed to continuing to support investment with such a great return. That is the lives, the people, the families of our community. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm very humbled, watching all parties, all groups, work for one joint vision to see change, to transform lives, and to give us hope that we can see a destiny and a future that's great as we come together. So it's been inspiring for me to sit up here to hear, of course, the past year journey, seeing that we're doing something and we're doing it together. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll second the thank yous to everyone involved that's already been spoken to. One last ask is to the community to help build the capacity further. So if you know people who would be peacekeepers, if you know people willing to be mentors or members of the Elders Council for the Peacemaker Fellows, and of course you've heard repeatedly the calls for additional funding to help with further expansion, partners and opportunities to educate others about Advanced Peace Lansing. So talk to any of the team members. No, talk to Charles. If you want to know more about Advanced Peace, if you sit on a board or if your organization would like to know more, please invite someone in to talk to your organization more about the work. And then after today's event, we're going to share some documents on the website. That year one evaluation report that was mentioned, the handout that you have, and you can get those at advancedpeacelansingingham.org. So, on behalf of the whole team, thank you very much. We appreciate it.